Hello, my name is Autumn McQueen, and this is the Productive and Counterproductive Behaviors in the Workplace assignment for Psych 516. The Chapter 1 question is: how have recent historical events affected the course of research in organizational psychology? And give an example of an event in the resulting outcome. So, the current state of the world and society is always going to play a role in the research conducted at that time. Most researchers develop their ideas for their experiments based on what they've experienced in their life, things that are going on currently in the media, things that they're seeing going around in the world. They want to figure out, why this is happening, what they can do to change it, if there's anything that they can do to change it. And, in regards to organizational psychology, researchers are going to want to keep up with the changes happening in the workforce. Um, Companies are looking for techniques to remain successful. The individuals entering the workforce right now are getting younger. You have the baby boomers who have retired. You have this new generation of people entering the workforce, and they think completely differently than the generations before us. And this brings me to the event that is my example, which is the recession of 2008. You had companies that went into bankruptcy and closed. So researchers and they were sought out by companies to figure out, how can we keep our company successful? How do we make this change? The workforce change. You had an introduction of social media jobs. You have people who are finding ways to support their families differently. Um, you have more individuals who have self-employment. So it's okay, I'm not working for somebody else, I want to work for myself. How can I remain competitive against these other companies? How can I draw customers in? So you have organizational psychology researchers. This is the things that they're doing research on. How do we maintain um, individuals in these companies? And it's just the dynamics of the workforce are changing. They continue to change. People are getting creative. So it's, how can we figure out to make society continue? Chapter 3 question: describe the socialization process for graduate students in the program. Is the program successful in socializing newcomers and creating job embeddedness? So, at Liberty University, the process starts with recruitment and admission. I don't know about anybody else, but once you filled out the form on Liberty's website that you were interested, it was like phone calls and emails from admissions counselors like, how can we help you? How can we assist you? What do you need help with? Do you need assistance with the financial aid process? Have you already filled it out? Do you have the ability to pay out of pocket? What's going on? So, that initial process was recruitment admission and then financial aid. Next is the actual registering for classes and needing to figure out the requirement for graduation based on your program. So then I would say the next step would include your actual classes and then how to be socialized in those classes. It would include your professor creating a syllabus. And, in that syllabus, it'll have the school's policy, the professor's policy for how they want you to turn in assignments, a breakdown of each module, what assignments are due. It'll have your textbook, where that information comes from, whether there is a video attached or any additional reading from like peer-reviewed journals or anything like that. So that would be located in the syllabus. Um, Also, most of the classes I've particularly had at Liberty have like the introduction discussion board where everybody in the class, including the professor, will write a statement and they'll introduce themselves and just to give a little background so that other people know who's in the class. Is kind of a way to be like, oh, okay, this is that person, and I'm responding to their discussion board later on in class. So, also a part of this process would be the actual assignments that are issued weekly, you know, and then another part of socialization is the actual discussion boards. This is the opportunity to let your professor know what you learned. It's an opportunity um, to see what your peers are learning, because and how they understood concepts. Because you may have somebody in your class that comes up with an analogy or an example, and it completely gives you another perspective of the topic discussed for that week. Um, another, uh, I think another part of this process would be the feedback that you receive from your professors on your assignments. That way that you can continue to get better. Um, constructive criticism is good. That way you can continue to be a better writer and student, and that you can go out into the real world. You know, Liberty also has academic assistance if you're having issues. I think that the program has developed strategies to assist students as much as possible. I think it is difficult not interacting face to face, but the only negative I would say is the opportunity for internships online. But depending on what field you're working in, this may just be an extension of what you're already working on. Chapter 4 question: how can an organization reduce or prevent work family conflict? For this particular topic, I think this is something that takes the organization and the individual employees to work on. You can't just put all of this on just the organization or just the individual employee. Organizations need to be supportive and understanding. Yes, I am here. I'm working for your company. This is my job. This helps me to survive. But people have to also realize there are other companies that may be more supportive of that balance between home and work life. We weren't created just to work, work, work. And this is why you have individuals looking more towards self employment or looking for companies that um, present these other opportunities to better assist their employees. I also see, and some of those things may be like healthcare and wellness initiatives. Everybody is on a health kick and wanting to be healthier. So those things are enticing to employees. Competitive wages. The cost of living increases every year, but wages tend to stay stagnant. But how do you retain employment? You have competitive wages. Also, sufficient training is very important. Make sure that you are providing your employees with the knowledge that they need to be successful. Because how can you expect somebody to be successful if you're not giving them the necessary tools to do that? And with that, I would also say sufficient staffing, because you have a lot of people that are overworked and underpaid. But, if you have that sufficient staffing, it kind of balances out that workload. I would also say providing teleworking opportunities. Before COVID, you had companies that offered teleworking, but, this also, COVID provided companies, an outlook into seeing that people can get work done from home. People can still be productive and raise their families. So, being able to potentially be able to provide a fixed schedule, maybe, still have a 40-hour work week, but maybe you work 4 days out of the week, or, maybe you come into the office 3 days and you have 2 days of teleworking. I would also say that organizations should promote from within the company as much as possible. You know, Even my organization, it's frustrating when you have outsiders come into the agency and they're not even completely understanding of the policy and the procedures and the work that goes into it. And you're like, I know somebody who's been here, who was completely capable of doing this job, but you promoted from outside the company when you had somebody who's been working hard and showing you this for years that they could do this job. And they might have even had ideas based on their experiences. So I think that's something that would have been beneficial from both sides. Another way to reduce or prevent is, the direct supervisor support. It's important that you place people in positions that they are trained to do, that they're capable of managing other people and assisting their employees how they're needed, that they're able to recognize that maybe their subordinate is having issues with policy or procedures and they may need extra assistance. Now, the individual employee's responsibilities, I would say, is the ability to balance work life and your personal life. You have to remain professional despite potential outside influences. Time management skills and making sure that you're able to produce the work that is assigned to you, but also recognizing that you may have to seek assistance with your supervisor or your HR if things arise, and also arranging assistance from family members if needed. Just recognizing that there may be a potential issue that you may need more assistance with. Chapter 5 question. Imagine you have been asked to develop a performance assessment program for employee development. What techniques could you use to adequately evaluate employee performance as comprehensively as possible? Think of Murphy's List. So if I had to develop my performance assessment, I would take elements actually from both Murphy's model and also Campbell's models. So you definitely have to discuss the actual enroll dimensions, which would include the specific job tasks that your employee has. I know at my agency, whenever we have performance evaluations, we give out an actual copy of the job descriptions of the hiring information for your particular for your particular categorization, your specialization. So it's like it lists all your job expected performances, and this is what you should be doing. This is what's supposed to do, and then it's, well, how are you doing these? How are you meeting that role? And so then I also liked from both models kind of like the extra role. Like I like the written and oral communications. That is important, especially depending on the type of job that you do. How are you able to write out the necessary requirements? How's your speaking capabilities? What efforts are you demonstrating on a daily basis? How are you with your time management? How are you able to maintain, your personal discipline? A lot of companies have time constrictions with like cell phones and using those. How are you at managing that time and just getting your assignments done. How do you work with your peers? How do you interact with them? How do you work with your team? Are you in a supervision or leadership situation? Could you potentially be in a leadership or supervision role? Are you exhibiting those qualities? The destructive, hazardous behaviors. Have there been any incidents? Are there any things that are questioned about your behavior that need to be brought up? Those are kind of the pieces that I took from those two. But then I also created some of my own where I added constructive criticism from the supervisor. I feel like people want to know where their strengths and their weaknesses are. What do I need to work on? Do you, as the supervisor, recognize that your employee has some limitations, that they need additional assistance somewhere? Maybe offering techniques to do the job better. And I think that the employee should also have an opportunity for self reflection. Where do they feel they may need extra training? Do they need additional clarification on policies and procedures? An opportunity to discuss their goals and motivations. How do they feel about the company? Do they feel as though that they can move forward? Do they want to learn other aspects for potential cross training so that they can move forward in their career for advancement or potential education? So those are just some things that I came up with. Chapter 6 question: what are some possible common organizational constraints? How could they lead to counterproductive behaviors? So, some common constraints are absenteeism and then management supervisory issues. So, when it comes to absenteeism, being late, leaving early, consistently calling out, maybe taking extended lunch breaks. This all kind of leads back to job satisfaction and, just maybe how customers feel about how an employee feels about the organization they are working for. Whether they feel unprepared for the job role that they're in because of inadequate training, whether they do have work family conflicts at home or issues with the supervisor or coworker. It's how do we fix these things to help assist you with that? Because is it the absenteeism, you just don't want to be here, or you have a lack of motivation for the job, or is it that you feel like you're not prepared? And that's something that needs to be figured out. In regards to management supervisory issues, there can be an abuse of supervision, whether it's demeaning your subordinates with statements, or being overcritical, or maybe even assigning extra assignments, playing favorites. And maybe the supervisor has inadequate training where they were never taught how to properly supervise. Maybe they were thrown in a position and they were modeling their behavior based on past supervisors. Social undermining. The texts also mention some less common constraints. Drug and alcohol abuse, which could lead to absenteeism and would also be kind of part of that work family conflict that somebody is dealing with. Potential workplace violence, being that still goes back to job satisfaction and issues that may arise. Maybe somebody lost employment or they feel as though they're struggling. Potential sabotage, whether, getting somebody else fired, espionage, maybe stealing from the company and getting caught up, employee theft, depending on the organization, you could have somebody stealing money. And then another less common constraint is, sexual harassment. All of these things can kind of lead to counterproductive behaviors. This is the conclusion of my productive and counterproductive behaviors in workplace assignments. Thank you for taking the time to listen.